and welcome back to the Pure Nintendo podcast. My name is Jemma, and with me this week I have Pure Nintendo's own RPG king. I have Kirk. Welcome, Kirk.
It's good to be here. Glad to sit on the throne.
Nice. Very good to have you back. Just the two of us this week, so the dynamic duo of Jemma and Kirk. And this week we are going to talk about the Indie World Showcase that Nintendo dropped on to us last week, as well as covering a few games we're playing. We've got some DLC to talk about, amiibo that's been announced. So let's get to it. Thank you also in advance for listening to this episode. And if you like what you hear, please remember to like us on YouTube or subscribe to us or rate us on the audio platforms. We really do appreciate it. So let's kick things off with that Indie World Showcase. And we mentioned last week when we talked about the Zelda trailer that Nintendo loves to just shadow drop these little things onto us. And this one came with kind of moment's notice. I think it was another kind of 24-hour type of deal. Like, hey, tune in tomorrow for this little session that we've got 20 minutes worth of indie games to talk about.
Those are the best kind, though, right? I mean, when you get the announcement, you don't want to say, "Oh crap, I got to wait a week."
Yeah, exactly. I think it's good. Yeah. And it gives us a little bit of time to kind of speculate and think about it ahead of time, but then straight into it pretty much, which is cool. So so we both checked it out. There was, I would say, a pretty long list of titles discussed in a pretty short amount of time. And I don't know if you noticed a theme. It's hard to say. There's been themes of, there were a lot of farming sims or RPGs previously. I did notice a lot of cats in this one. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I had the exact same thought. Whether it's focusing on cats or they're just kind of walking around and appearing in places, there were cats everywhere.
Yeah, very, very cat-focused, cat-centric, which is cool. In fact, the first one was, I think it was Miniko's Night Market, which featured Nico the sun cat, I think it was, and he was some sort of god that helped out with farming life and then was banished. And so, yeah, that sounded like an interesting little adventure sim. But yeah, I've got a list of all of the games here. So, I mean, we don't have to go through all of them because there are quite a few, but we'll go through some that stood out to us. Do you feel like you wanted to begin with one that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I think the one that most struck me, and it's not because I thought it stood out from the rest of the games that were being mentioned, but because it reminded me of a previous game that I played, and that was Paper Trail.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
With the kind of like you're folding the elements of the environment in order to create paths for people to move on. And I've seen it's like that whole Mad Magazine thing. And again, I'm dating myself. But at the end in Mad Magazine, when you folded it and you took the picture, and by folding the paper together, then you got a different picture, and there was always a gag in it. But
yes.
I like that kind of puzzle, that sort of environmental. What can you see, but what's hidden in plain sight? And you've got to slide all the proper pieces together in order to get things along. So it's the kind of quiet puzzle game that when I'm done with a bigger, heavy action game, it's a good way to relax.
Definitely. Yeah, that one looked really nice. And a lot of these games for me, and I think this is one of the great things about these indie kind of showcases, Nintendo does a great job supporting independent developers. There's so much creativity and there's so much room to just kind of do whatever you want almost, like these puzzle games, adventure games, sim games, doesn't matter what it is. But I love that some of the developers spoke during the showcase, which I thought was really nice to kind of see them in person, and you kind of get that passion from them and how long they've been working on games and things like that. And these are passion projects. And we spoke a lot about this last week, actually, with Barry from Premium Edition as well. So I think it's really great that Nintendo supports these kind of developers. I think something like Paper Trail, which comes out in August, I believe, so it's not too far away, does look pretty, fun in between other bigger pieces. Like, I mean, August gives us plenty of time to recover from the likes of Tears of the Kingdom, for example.
Yeah.
and then we can sort of slide into something like that. There were a few puzzle games. I think there was something called Quilts and Cats of Calico. And I thought that, do you know about, I don't know what Calico is, but the game looked great. I thought it actually looked really fun. And again, it had cats in it.
Calico is a type of cat.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, it's like there are only females. It's we've had calico. I have a calico now. Well,
Really?
Sophie does. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's a diluted calico, so it's kind of like a white cat with some black, some brown, and all females or mostly females or something. I'm not sure what the deal is with them, but yeah.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that looked kind of fun with like it was like another kind of it seemed like a puzzly thing, but more of a multiplayer kind of game, like a tabletop game or something where you place pieces of a quilt onto a board and you have buttons. And it looks like there's just cats roaming around everywhere as well. Which looks
yeah.
random.
Because I didn't get a feel for what the actual gameplay is. Kind of like you're saying, like it's some sort of puzzle type game, but the intricacies of it. I guess Nintendo didn't give them a lot of time to cover that, so I am curious to see what that looks like. And Sophie, who loves cats, I'm sure is going to be all over that game. So.
This would be the showcase for her then.
Yeah,
sure.
We can bring her on to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it had a cat customizer, that one, and there were weekly challenges and things, which makes it sound like it's got some sort of legs for longevity, which is cool as well. So that was one that sort of stood out. I think another one that caught my eye was something called Animal Well, which I sort of think it's a bit like a platforming experience in a labyrinth. I didn't catch what sort of animal you were, but it looked like you were in a well and there's all sorts of creatures you kind of interact with, friends or foes. It looked really dark, and pixelated, and I guess you kind of went through and uncovered more areas as you progressed.
Yeah.
You
kind of had that retro sort of 16-bit, 8-bit art vibe to it. So, but it looks good. Yeah, the kind of creepy.
Yeah, a bit of a creepy vibe. Yeah, and the intro to that was quite amusing too. That developer was that the one with the developer standing in the lake?
Yeah,
and someone. I'm like, okay, that was funny. Yeah, that looked interesting. Another one that did catch my eye was Plate Up, which is I guess a restaurant kind of sim. They called it a roguelike, I think, management sim. And I think because it's got randomly generated shifts, they referred to it as, which is cool. And I like these kind of restauranty games where you have to, you've got a time limit, you've got to give the food to the customers in a timely manner. And obviously there's a lot of stress involved. And having worked in hospitality, I have no idea why I would actually enjoy a game version of this because it's...
Well, maybe the stress when you're not actually worried about getting yelled at for it is easier to deal with.
Yes, exactly. But that one looks fun. I can see myself playing that with my kids. We've got Overcooked too. So that's something we've spent a lot of time with, which is quite fun. And this looks similar but different in that I think in this one you actually can build your own kitchen. You can design it the way you want it. You can strategically place elements of the kitchen in areas that you might think are more useful to you, like an oven over here or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I don't know which part is randomly generated. I suppose it must be the customers and the orders and all that sort of thing comes in, as a random shift that you have to deal with. Anyway, that sounds pretty fun, and that's out in October. And the other thing I liked about the showcase was that all of these games do have pretty different release dates. Some were out at the end of the showcase, like out today, they said, and then others were coming out. We've got July, we've got fall, we've got October, and then some are next year. Some are just given a 2023 kind of slate, so they don't have a sort of specific release date just yet. So it kind of paints a picture of what's to come and gives you the feeling that there's something coming across the next, 6 to 12 months, which is really cool. I kind of enjoyed that aspect as well. What else stood out to me? I think there was some interesting... Oh, you know what? Speaking of puzzle games, a little to the left has some DLC, I guess it was, new puzzles. Yes. Yeah. Have you played this one?
I did not. That's another one actually that Sophie reviewed, so we really should have brought her on for this. But I did watch her play a little bit of that, and it looked kind of cute, clever sort of puzzles. Again, presented in a way that are different from what we see most of the time. So I like the originality of it. And it's great that they already have DLC coming, that the game was successful enough to warrant that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I have played it, and it is really fun and unique in that it's a puzzle game where you have to fit things into a drawer in specific order or whatever. Something just, who would have thought, right? Like we do that at home all the time, like try to find stuff or whatever it is. I love it. I love that they've done this. And that one's out in June, that DLC, 25 new puzzles. There was a lot of DLC covered, like Shovel Knight, Pocket Dungeon. A big one was Cult of the Lamb, which is a free update, I believe. And it seemed like it had a lot in it. It's like remixed dungeons with new versions of the bosses, 3 new modes, different buildings and followers and quests and things like that. And I don't know if you've played that one or not. Have you played
No,
Cult
I
of
did
Lamb?
not.
No. Yeah, I reviewed that one last year and it's very unique and very fun, actually. Very different sort of game. And I gave it a pretty good review. So interesting and very cool that they're still giving that life. And I can understand why, because I think it did pretty well at the time. So it's good to see that one continuing on. And yeah, actually I meant to say in the little to the left, the cupboards and drawers DLC, speaking of cats, that there's a little paw that comes out occasionally and grabs things from you. Did you notice that?
I do remember that too.
Oh, so funny. So funny.
It amuses me that in video games where cats are involved, it's almost always they're getting in the way of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Dogs are helpful in video games. Cats get in the way in video games.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Well, cats do their own thing, as you know, as a cat owner. I've had cats over the years. They dance to their own beat, which is one thing we love about them. There was another cat game, actually, something called Little Kitty Big City, which looked, and that was sort of at the end in the quick. There were like 5 or 6 or 7 kind of games that were shown. I think Paper Trail was one of those ones too.
Yeah.
Really quickly in the sort of last 2 minutes. And it looked like a third-person adventure with a cat walking across the streets and doing different things. I don't know. I want to know more about that one. Do you know anything about this one?
That one I don't know. I think I must have completely missed that.
Yeah, it came straight after Paper Trail, so you're probably too excited about Paper Trail.
Yeah. Well, because after I started looking up that other game, and I still can't remember the name of that other game that involved sort of like the origami approach to gameplay, and it's driving me insane because I loved it. I got to find that. Yeah, and that one's 2024 kind of release window, so we don't know when that's out. And just one other one I'll quickly mention, which is another quick, very short snippet in the final segments, which is called Brotato, if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it reminded me of that. What is it called? Is it Vampire Slayer or something? It's like a shooter where you're just shooting in all directions with hordes of things coming at you.
Yeah.
I like shooters, so that one kind of looked fun and interesting. Yeah.
And there are quite a few of those too. I'll be curious to see visually, it certainly has a visual look that most of them don't, kind of like a more cute approach to it. But there are a lot of those kind of games out there, so I'll be curious to see how this one stands out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, there's another one I wanted to mention, which was called Shadows Over Loathing. Do you remember this one? It's the stick figures in the 1920s.
Yes. Yeah, the black and white. Yeah.
It looked a bit, I guess, RPG-ish in that you're having kind of battles and maybe upgrading yourself. But it's stick figures, like stick drawings, stick people drawn in a black and white 1920s-esque world with mobsters and musicians. I think that they mentioned some of the characters. You can be something like a jazz agent or a cheese wizard or something random. It's a silly looking RPG that could be quite fun if it pulls off. Yeah. And I think that one's out now too, to be honest. I think it was
Yes.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah.
I think it is. I'm looking it up now, and you can get that.
Yeah, digitally you can. I think they are doing a physical release in the fall as well for that one. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about is something called Oxenfree 2, Lost Signals. And it caught my eye for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a Netflix game studio, which I thought was interesting. So Netflix, I guess we've heard that they're dabbling in games. I don't know if they've released anything previously on the Switch.
Yeah, I had the same thought, because when they were talking about their games, I wasn't sure what that meant as like how they were being delivered. But it looks like, it's just a game studio that's going to be releasing games for any system. And I'm assuming will probably be done to push a lot of their own shows.
Yeah, probably.
But I don't believe Oxenfree is a show.
No, not that I've heard of. It is called Oxenfree 2, so
Yeah.
assuming it's a sequel. I hadn't heard of it before this. Had you?
Maybe. It's not one that I reviewed. I think I may have seen it come over the wire. But I have not played it.
Yeah, well, it looks quite interesting. It's very atmospheric looking, kind of bleak, I suppose. I think it's set 5 years later after the original title, and it looks as though you're kind of communicating with ghosts or something. There's some sort of supernatural element. Portals are at work. Could be cool. Could be interesting. I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, yeah, as I said, I didn't realize Netflix would be doing games for other sort of systems. I didn't really know what they'd be doing. I kind of thought, I don't know what they have in the US, but in Australia we have one little kind of trivia game on Netflix that we've been playing at home. I'm like, is this what Netflix Game Studios is? But no, it's obviously a lot more than that. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. The original, I just pulled that up. It looks like it came out in 2017, October 6, 2017. And the publisher is a company called Night School.
Right.
So Netflix didn't do the original. It looks like they're publishing the sequel. And maybe I'll need to dig back into the first one. Because, yeah, visually, it was one of the more striking presentations, I think, visually.
Yeah, it did stand out.
A lot of atmospheric graphics and some strong-looking characters and big, tough poses as they set out on their adventure. Looked like they were ready to get things done. So
yeah, exactly. And I think, and it's probably not a surprise coming from Netflix that it looks good visually, but also that the audio quality seemed really good. Like the voice work seemed quite strong, a strong element, which is cool. So it's almost like an interactive show in a way, like a supernatural show, which is cool. Awesome. So, I mean, overall, what did you think? Were you happy with the showcase? Were you expecting more or less, or kind of just it is what it is?
Yeah, this one for me, it is what it is, and that's not in any way, shape, or form trying to disparage it. The games, for the most part, weren't in my wheelhouse. So but when that happens, what I like to find out is which of these games that normally I wouldn't play is the one that's going to break through and end up being the one that I'm totally into. So yeah, I'll be following them all and checking them out, but nothing where I was like, man, this looks incredible. I can hardly wait.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I was thinking about it beforehand. When something like a Tears of the Kingdom trailer drops, we all have very high expectations or kind of, I guess, things we would really like to see in something like that. Or if it's a Nintendo Direct, we all want to know what's happening with Metroid or what's happening with, this and that. When it's an indie Direct, it's kind of like we don't have any, specific expectations. It is what it is in that I'm just happy to see a bunch of games from different genres and different developers, and kind of look forward to seeing, how they pan out over the next 6 to 12 months. So, yeah, I love that they do it, as I said, and I think it's a really good, exercise for them and for us and for developers, and it's kind of win-win-win. So, yeah. All right,
and I'm curious how they decide which developers they're going to work with, which games get in.
That's true.
I know nothing about the process, so I don't even want to speculate. But I'd be curious because, as we get a lot of press releases from a lot of indie developers about games that are coming up, and there were a lot that I would think would have fit in this great. There are some indie games that weren't part of this that'll be coming within the next 3 or 4 months that I think look fantastic. So why not them? Why were they not in there? I'm just curious to see what the process is.
Yeah, true. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer though. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's dig around and maybe we can find out.
I'm sure someone would be happy to explain it to us.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's move on to some other news. I think let's just jump ahead to the next round of DLC, since we've been talking about kind of games coming out and DLC. Something huge that I know you're very interested in is the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC. Would you like to give us an overview of what that entails and what when it's out, etc.?
Yeah, it is coming out next week. So it's, again, much sooner than I would have expected. but I'm thrilled that it's coming. And this, of course, being the fourth wave of the DLC, it is a brand new story scenario called Future Redeemed. Which brings a lot of new characters. It's going to bring plot elements, and it brings characters, especially from the first Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Shulk and Rex have both grown up, and it looks like they're buddies now. Shulk is from the first game. Rex was the protagonist of the second, and we're going to see we're going to get an adventure with those two in it and with a lot of new characters. And it looks like it's happening before the events of Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Okay.
So it's going to tie in some story elements that hopefully will answer some questions that I had. Now, the Xenoblade Chronicles games are very heavy in storytelling, and a lot of it is confusing. I don't know if that's done on purpose, or I'm just so busy fighting that I'm not paying close enough attention.
Yep.
But yeah, it looks like we're getting some of those characters back, and greatly looking forward to that. Although I do have to say that the moment they released that or announced that, I went back, and it had been so long since I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that I had completely forgotten all of my strategies for the battle system and just gave up. So I'm hoping that when this comes out, that they start us all from scratch, and all of the little intricacies and fine tuning that I've done over the course of 140 hours or whatever I put into Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I don't need anymore, because I don't want to have to relearn that whole system. I just want to start from scratch with something new. So we'll find out if that's the case.
Yeah. I look forward to hearing about that. Is just in terms of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3, what's the difference in time in the story? Like, how much time has passed between those two?
Well, they kind of happen in different universes.
Right.
And that's part of the whole thing. Like in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, we find out eventually they were both happening kind of at the exact same time, but in completely different universes. And then there's I'm not there. Never mind. I was about to deliver a spoiler. Okay. I will stop. But at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, they give us a little bit. Of course, they're again. Are we okay to give spoilers now? The game has been out a long time.
It has been out a while.
How careful do I need to be on this?
Well, as long as we say spoiler alert, I think it's okay.
Spoiler alert, skip ahead. But there are some characters, I won't go too deep into it. There are some characters from previous games that do appear in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and they play a very important role, and we find out about how the other universes sort of all tie together. But it's kind of like, oh, this happened, now we got to do this. And so it looks like the DLC that's coming, the Future Redeemed, is going to actually tell us that story instead of just be the incentive that pushes towards something else.
Okay, cool. I think it's amazing the amount of, I guess, time and effort they must put into developing these stories. You know, the game itself, as you said, you put in 140 hours, right? And obviously there's a lot to do. And then there's 4 waves of DLC that they also develop. So, yeah, it's huge. It's massive.
Yeah, and I wonder if when they develop the first one, do they have the ideas for 2 and 3 in mind? Or is it just you know what, we've got to tie it together. What can we do? Let's look at the first story. What can we pull over? How do we do it? How do we explain it? Hopefully we handle it better than a lot of the mistakes they made in the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. It's like, you know, The Matrix, where they had one Matrix movie and then they decided they wanted to make more. They didn't really have a plan for those. Same with, I think, the latest Star Wars trilogy. Yeah, wasn't necessarily all thought out ahead of time as opposed to the original trilogy. I actually saw The Force Awakens last night in front of an orchestra, which was actually pretty cool, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, that would be pretty cool, yeah. Yeah, because the music's fantastic. Boy, yeah. So
good. Yeah, I took my 12-year-old son, who's a big Star Wars fan, and he hadn't seen any Star Wars on the big screen. So not only was it on the big screen, but also with a live orchestra. So welcome to Star Wars.
Yeah, it's a good way to get into it.
Yes. Sorry, a bit of a side note there, but it was just what happened to happen last night. It was very exciting. Does this at all tie in with these new amiibo then? Because are these two from Xenoblade 3?
Yes,
Yes.
there are 4 on the way now.
Okay.
Pyra and Mithra were in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. They are not, at least from what we've seen, going to be part of Future Redeemed.
Okay.
They were in the game that Rex was in. However, they did announce to the one guy's name I can't even remember, and Mio. But the 2 main characters from Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are also now getting amiibo. They didn't announce when they're coming, but they will be coming. So
cool.
Yeah, we'll end up with 4 total from this. Oh, and Shulk is already available. So that's 5 now. Xenoblade Chronicles amiibo that we'll be able to have.
Very cool. Are you planning to?
You have your pre-order in already.
I do. Yes, for Pyra and Mithra. Yes, I do. Very excited. I know we were talking on Twitter about it, and pre-orders opened in Australia at least earlier for some reason. So I jumped on board and got it straight away. I'm like, I'm just going to get it. I'm not going to not get it. So I might as well get it now while it's front of mind. So.
Well, as soon as I can, I'll do too. In fact, right before we got on here, I hopped onto the various sources I have for these things to see what's there. And they're now listed at Best Buy, and it's listed at GameStop, but you cannot pre-order them yet.
Oh,
so
okay. I meant to ask because I saw something about it being at GameStop, but I didn't know if it was a pre-order. It was just, okay, it's just listed. Fair enough. Well, yes, I hope you do get those. I'm sure you will.
Oh, yeah. Well, if I have to, I'll order them from Japan. I have all of the Fire Emblem amiibo. In fact, the only amiibo I get are Xenoblade Chronicles and Fire Emblem. And a lot of the Fire Emblem ones I did order from various Japanese places because it ends up being cheaper than getting them from scalpers on eBay. So,
yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm still missing a few Fire Emblem amiibo. So, that I missed out in the last round, which is a bit sad. And it seems like this year is a bigger year for amiibo. I don't remember getting so many last year, but this year it's like...
Yeah, it looked like it was dying off. And now they're really pushing it again and finding ways to make them relevant to make sure that you can use them in the games.
Which is awesome. We've got lots of Zelda-related amiibo coming back out, like re-releasing for Tears of the Kingdom as well as a new one. Sorry, what were you going to say about the connectivity?
Like I was thinking of Fire Emblem Engage. You can use the amiibo there to get various items, and you got special items if you used actual Fire Emblem amiibo. So I like that they do that. I would like it more if I liked it when they give you things like special weapons or weapon skins, outfits and stuff. That kind of thing to me is more fun than just the occasional consumable item or something like that. But either way, it's good to have them involved for something other than, say, Smash Brothers, of course, where they're very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would like to see more weapons like that. That'd be very cool. During the week, one of the big games that came out was Advance Wars, which, speaking of Fire Emblem, Intelligent Systems, who develop Fire Emblem, also develop the Advance Wars series, which I think is cool. And also, when you think about it, kind of obvious because they're both tactical, kind of strategic, turn-based kind of games, albeit different kind of look and feel, I suppose. And first of all, before we talk about Advance Wars, have you played any Advance Wars over the years? What's your history with this series?
I have never played an Advance Wars game, and I remember when I first started getting into Fire Emblem, and a bunch of people were saying, well, this is just Advanced Wars. Like but I never played it, and I think it's because, like you said, it's a completely different look. The thing I liked about Fire Emblem were the characters and the stories, and in Advance Wars, although the gameplay is pretty much the same thing, it was like tanks and airplanes and stuff like that. At least it seemed to me. So I was more about the actual characters behind the pieces that you're putting on the board. So I should. And it's funny because the further we got from the last Advance Wars games, the less I saw that. After a while, every game that looked like Fire Emblem was like, well, this is a Fire Emblem game or style game. People completely dropped Advanced Wars. So
True.
I'm thrilled for the Advanced Wars fans, people who were into that, to finally be able to get to play something like that again. And it looks like it's getting very good reviews.
Yes. Totally agree with all of that. I'm trying to think which one I got into first. I think I played Advance Wars first. So this release is Advance Wars 1 and 2. The series has been around since 1988. And originally it was only Japan, which I think Fire Emblem was the same, right? The original Fire Emblem was Japan
Yep.
only. Yeah.
Yep.
So very, very similar. Obviously, Intelligent Systems released both series. Side note, Intelligent Systems does a lot of games. Like, I didn't realize they do the WarioWare series.
I don't think I knew that either.
No, and they do Paper Mario as well, which is a great series.
And that was that the 3DS game that they did that was kind of like Worms. It was that kind of game. What was it called? It was a steampunk kind of game. I wish I could. Steam Heist or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Was that them as well? Wow. I did not know that. That's a really good game. Yeah, so Intelligent Systems, I think, do a really, really great job. And obviously we've talked about Fire Emblem before. We're both big fans, particularly you, because you've played more of them than I have. Advance Wars, so they've got, I think, 13 games in total, including a couple of spin-off-ish or re-releases. And this one that's just come out on the Switch is a release, I suppose you could say. It's a combination. It's Advance Wars 1 and 2, which were released in 2001 and 2003 originally for the Game Boy Advance, which is why they call it Advance Wars. The original series, I think, was called Famicom Wars, which is cool because that was the NES in Japan was called the Famicom, and it was Famicom Wars. So, bit of history there. I have played both of these previously. My friend lent me his copy of Advance Wars, the GBA game, and then I think I ended up getting Advance Wars 2 myself. And I think there's been a couple. There was, is it Dual Strike, I think, was on the DS. And there's been a bit of a gap. I mean, there was Battalion Wars, I think, on the GameCube or Wii, not sure. That was kind of a spin-off-y type of thing. And I've been clamoring for Advance Wars, for a new Advance Wars for a few years now. I've been like, every time there's a Nintendo Direct, I'm not the person who says, where's Metroid? I'm the person who says, where's Advance Wars? Because it's just missed out. So I am very happy to see it back, even though it is, it's kind of a port, or I guess it's a remastering of some Game Boy Advance games, and they look great. I've picked up the game. I've been playing it. It's a lot of fun. It is turn-based, so it's exactly like if you know how to play Fire Emblem, you'll know exactly how to play Advance Wars. And there are some, like you said, you're kind of moving around tanks and things on a little board. And I've always said, when I've described it to people, like to friends, it's kind of like chess with tanks, like, because you are taking turns, right? You have your turn, even though you can move all your pieces, not just one piece at a time. But it's like you've got, your side and the other side, and your goal is to either take out, I suppose, a king, which, excuse me, in Advance Wars means you take over their headquarters, or you eliminate all the competitors. Like you have to eliminate all the tanks, all the battalion, all the infantry, whatever is on the board or on the scene at the time. So there's a lot of strategy involved because, just like in Fire Emblem, you can move for a certain number of spaces depending on your character. Like in Fire Emblem, if you're on a horse, you can move a lot further than if you're, just a person walking. And in this, if you're a tank, you can go further than you can if you're a little infantry troop. As you approach, obviously there's a percentage of how much damage you could do versus how much damage you can take, and whether other people can then reach you. So it's very, I love the strategy element. It's also why I love Fire Emblem, because it is very strategic. And if you really think about your moves and plan ahead and, obviously not lose all your pieces or your whatever. I think in Advance Wars, in Fire Emblem, I don't like to lose people, right? I don't think anyone does. In Advance Wars, it's not as bad to lose a tank because it's just a tank. You're like, oh, I guess I can sacrifice this tank because then, the enemy will be close enough that my artillery can kind of shoot and, take out whatever. So it feels a little less like that. But I still try not to lose my little people. And the people element that you've mentioned, I guess, comes into play with what they call the commanding officers, or the COs. So each, and they have their little spiel, and it's very lighthearted, and it is anime-esque in a very, colorful way, as opposed to Fire Emblem. It's a bit darker, it's a bit more mature. This is more, lighter, colorful. You've got your kind of the different players egging on each other. Like the bad guys will be like, oh, how could you do that to me? I didn't see that coming, or I'll get you next time type of thing. And the good guys like, yeah, we did it. They're like very enthusiastic. And there's a bit of rapport between them, and you grow. Your COs kind of grow in terms of skill, and the relationships do have some growth as well, which I really like. So there is a bit of that, but it's definitely not to the extent of Fire Emblem, which is obviously all about relationship building as well. So I think this one, I'm kind of only early into it, but I'm very much enjoying it. As I said, I have played it before, but there's just something really fun about working out where your tanks can go, trying to lose as few as possible or take over as many cities as possible, and push the bad guys back. And there's kind of superpowers. Your CO has like a superpower that you can unleash, after a certain number of moves, which gives you some sort of stats for one day, because it's done in days. Like day 1 you move and then the enemy moves, day 2 you move, the enemy moves, back and forth and such. Yeah, I think you should give it a go, Kirk.
Yeah, I think I will. I think I will, especially once I'm done with the last round of DLC for Fire Emblem Engage. Then it'll be a bit, most likely, before we get another one. So yeah, when I'm hankering for that kind of gameplay, I will do that.
I would be interested in your thoughts based on what you've just said, that it is, gameplay-wise very similar, story-wise very different. So it would be very interesting to hear your thoughts as a, Fire Emblem kind of connoisseur.
And someone who did it backwards, because I think a lot of people, especially around my age, started with Advance Wars and then would have moved on to Fire Emblem. So I'm doing it the flip of that. So
and that's what I did. Yeah, I sort of started with Advance Wars and then moved to Fire Emblem. I don't even remember how I got into Fire Emblem, but I did somehow. So, whereas you remember very distinctly, which is cool. So yeah,
it shaped my life.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, that's out now. I don't even know. I assume we'll be reviewing it. Don't know who's reviewing it, but someone will be reviewing it. So watch for our thoughts. I think it's like you said, it's getting good reviews. So yeah, definitely a fun time.
And real quickly, out of respect to intelligent systems, the game that I was talking about was not Steam Heist. It's called Codename Steam.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. And speaking of Amiibo, real quickly, going back to that game, if you had certain Fire Emblem Amiibo and scanned it into it, it put the Fire Emblem character into the game as kind of a ghost. So that is probably one of my all-time favorite methods or uses of Amiibo, because characters who aren't even part of the game, they were all based on like historical figures or literary characters were the people that were doing the fighting. But you could bring in certain Fire Emblem characters and put them if you scanned in the Amiibo. So that was fantastic.
Is this for Engage? Fire Emblem Engage? Which game is this for?
It was a separate game, and it was for the 3DS.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't actually, it wasn't a Fire Emblem game at all. It didn't involve.
Oh, you're talking about
just another game from Intelligent Systems.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I didn't connect those two thoughts. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. I love that, actually. Yeah. So just hang around in the background while you play as ghosts?
No, you can use them. You can move them around. It's just they weren't like part of the story. So I think that's why they called them ghost characters. You can use them in the fights, but they would never talk or be part of the between battle scenes.
What was that game called again?
Codename Steam.
Codename Steam. I've definitely heard of it. I don't think I've played it though. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people did. I believe it's one of those games that came and went and sort of disappeared, but I do have it. It's one that I bought and held on to. So.
Well, that's good. I was about to say, because the eShop has closed. So if you don't have it, then that's a bit sad, because I doubt that was a physical release. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
It was as well? Okay. Yep. So there's potential to buy it expensively off eBay if you haven't downloaded it.
You may still be able to find it.
Yeah, cool. Oh, thank you for that. That brings that to that conversation back around, which is awesome. Let's talk about some other games we're playing this week. So Advance Wars was the big one that I've been playing. What have you been? We'll talk about another game as well. But you have a turn. What's your game of the week? I suppose. What are you playing at the moment?
Well, aside from wrapping up the Fire Emblem Engage DLC, which I'm still playing through, and trying to get through the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC, I have a new game that was just released. I've taken the review for it, called Tin Hearts. A lot of people have been comparing the gameplay in this to the game Lemmings, which goes way back. to my old Macintosh days. I believe I played it there, but it's kind of like it's got this Victorian vibe to it that's very much like if you've ever read, I think it was Hans Christian Andersen, the story, The Steadfast Tin Soldier. It's sort of like fits visually with every single picture book I've ever seen of that story.
Cool.
But what it basically involves is, aside from this big story that ties it all together, this sort of like tender, kind of like heart-wrenching story that's going on in the background. But the gameplay is you have a box and you open it up and these tin soldiers come out and they'll follow a straight path. And you need to manipulate the environment around them in order to get them to their goal.
Cool.
And this involves all kinds of things from just like placing blocks, making sure that there are ramps in the right spot. Sometimes they'll fall off tables and hit drums and bounce over to the next thing that they need to go to. But you're manipulating time. You're finding out what went wrong. You're rewinding. You're putting things in place. So it's this very interactive, constantly hands-on approach to making sure that these tin soldiers get to their destination.
Cool. That does sound a bit like Lemmings. It also sounds a little bit like Mario versus Donkey Kong.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I had completely forgotten about that game. I played it and loved it, but it just went completely off my radar until I started playing this. I'm like, yeah, now I got to see if I can hop onto the eShop and get more. Oh, that's right.
Yes, exactly. That definitely sounds like it. And that is in my mind at the moment because I just wrote an article for the next edition and we're writing about the eShop and I included that game, Mario versus Donkey Kong, because it's one of the missing ones that I think people should check out if they can, or that I hope that would be ported elsewhere or receive a sequel of some sort because it was really, really good. And
it was surprising how good that game was. I think it really caught me off guard.
Same. Same. Yeah, well, this one sounds good. I like the sound of this. And in lieu of Mario vs. Donkey Kong, this sounds like something that could fill that kind of void.
Yep. It does have a couple problems, I think. I'll save those for the review, but it's not quite as tight, I'll say, as Mario versus Donkey Kong. But when you're using the environment, it's very like open and free in how you can do things. And to me, it could be a personal thing, but I don't like that as much. I like to think that there's one way to solve this, and you got to do it right, as opposed to, well, you can put this here and this here, and eventually it's going to work some way. And it's not quite that bad. You've obviously got to know what you're doing, but it's not as much precision in the puzzle solving as I prefer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And going back to Lemmings, because I never really played Lemmings, would that be the case with that game? Was there a one solution kind of deal, or was it more like just don't let the lemmings die?
If my memory is correct, then yes. There may have been a couple ways. It's been so long since I played it. But yeah, I seem to recall that if there wasn't just one way, then there may have been a couple, but it wasn't a just drop things where you can until you manage to get them to the right spot.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, maybe it's time for Lemmings to make a comeback as well.
I'm surprised it hasn't. Maybe it has in some way, and they just missed it.
Yeah, maybe it's just not in our sphere for some reason. Cool. That sounds really interesting. I look forward to reading your review on that one. Any other games that you're playing at the moment?
Yeah, just like mainly I'm preparing everything because especially once the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC drops, then that's going to be my focus until, of course, from any items that I'm reviewing, I got to leave room for those too. But I want to get that wrapped up, as all of us have said numerous times, before the new Legend of Zelda game drops.
Yeah. I think that's definitely front of mind for a lot of us. Can I ask you actually just a bit of a side note with the Tears of the Kingdom? How are you purchasing that? Are you going to download it? Are you going to get a kind of special edition or just the standard? What's your plan?
I did not go special edition. I got a standard. It's pre-ordered at Best Buy, so I could pick it up. And if Best Buy wants to be a sponsor now, you're welcome to do it. I think I mentioned them a couple times today.
Thank you.
But yeah, I have the day off work. So Best Buy will open at 10. I will be there at around 10:15, pick it up, bring it back, and then just play it, because once my son gets home, then he's going to want the Switch until it's bedtime. So I've got to get as far as I can before he gets home from school and takes over.
Awesome. that's going to be a good conversation for us after that comes out.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I haven't pre-ordered it, which seems silly, but I just don't know which one to get. And it's, the special edition looks so cool, but it's also really expensive. And I'm actually really seriously considering getting the Pro controller. There's the themed controller.
It is a good looking controller.
It looks really cool. And I think I've mentioned previously, we have 2 Pro controllers at the moment. There are 3 of us, myself and my 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
One of us has to miss out. Usually it's my youngest. He doesn't seem to care. He's fine with the Joy-Cons, but this could be a good excuse for me to upgrade mine, get a new one, a fancy new one with Tears of the Kingdom theme. And then
always use your children to justify expenses that don't really make a lot of sense logically. Yeah. We all do it, and it's quality parenting.
Thank you. Well, now that I've got the okay from you, Kirk, I think I should go ahead and do that. So I have pre-ordered the amiibo, and very seriously considering pre-ordering the controller, and then I'll probably just get the standard game because I don't think I can justify a special edition and a controller because the controller's like, I don't know what it is US. It's 100, and I think it's like 109 Australian. They're pretty expensive, these things, but it will last years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you're going to get a lot of use out of it, so it's not like
totally. Exactly. Cool. Well, I'm playing 2 little games as well that I could mention briefly. One is called Pupperazzi, which is like we were speaking before about cats and dogs. This is dogs, and they are super friendly and helpful. They're not antagonists at all. They're not trying to it's the cutest game I think I've ever seen. It's like you are a photographer, your job is to take photos of dogs, so it's paparazzi, but they call it paparazzi because it's puppies, paparazzi. So you have these missions. You have to go around and take photos of dogs doing things like holding a stick or in front of a lighthouse or whatever it is, certain breeds. There's just when I jumped into this game, the thing I noticed straight off is that there are just dogs everywhere. Like, it's just, if you're a dog lover, this is going to be the game for you. It's very cartoony and cute. It's not super realistic, although you can tell if it's a Dalmatian, it looks like a Dalmatian, if it's a Chihuahua, it looks like a Chihuahua. I don't know how many breeds there are. I haven't gone into that level of detail. There's a bunch though, and there seems to be new ones that come all the time. And you unlock or you purchase, I guess, upgrades for your camera. Couldn't think of the word for camera for a second there. You upgrade your camera, you get like fisheye lenses and things. You can do like black and white photos. It's pretty cool. Like, it's definitely different. I've never played anything quite like this. Maybe similar to Pokemon Snap, I guess, where you're taking photos of Pokemon, but this is about dogs. Anyway, it's really, really cute.
It sounds like it.
Such an adorable thing. It's so silly because the dogs are just like running around like crazy things. And I suppose if you've ever been to a dog park, they do run around like crazy things and they just interact with each other in all sorts of weird ways. And here they kind of don't run. They kind of like hop. It's a little, I'm not going to use the word clunky because it's deliberately done, I think, but the animation is, I don't know how to describe it. They kind of bounce around, like their legs don't move. It just adds to the cuteness anyway.
Are they doing like dog kind of things as they go around, or are they giving them more like anthropomorphic sort of human characteristics?
No, they're dogs. So they're on 4 legs, and I don't know what your character is. You can't really see yourself. It's sort of a first person thing. You can kind of see a hand, which is like a weird purple head, I think, or a blue head. It's like you're not human either, but you're standing on 2 legs. But the dogs are dogs. They look like dogs. They act like dogs. They chase balls. Okay. They chase sticks. They retrieve sticks for you. They'll pose. The good thing is they do pose pretty well. Like, they'll stop and stand still and you can take a photo. So it seems like it's a pretty easy game for kids to play, for example. You don't need to stress about, I've got to get this certain dog. It's really hard to find. They just kind of stand there for a few seconds and you can like snap them. It's like, and you can keep your photos. I think you have film, so it runs out eventually, but you can save them to your favorites so you can keep them elsewhere in a little album kind of thing. Yeah, it's, I don't know. It's such a random idea, but it's very cute. The other one I'm playing is starkly different to that, which is called Gripper. This is like a sci-fi racing adventure kind of game. It's what did I say? It's an arcade action racer. So I'm reviewing this one, and I was playing this one over the weekend or yesterday, and it's It's really hard to describe. So you're riding a motorcycle. It seems like an Akira kind of environment.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
I think I saw the visuals when that review came
Mm-hmm.
through. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's a very mixed bag. I thought it would be really good based on the trailer. It does have good elements to it. It's really hard. Like, it's super, super hard, which can be fine if that's the idea behind it. But this one is like straight into the difficulty. There's two, I guess one of the things I like about it is there are two distinct gameplay styles. One is you're riding your bike through these tunnels. I want to say a bit like Mario Kart in that it's 360, like the tunnels kind of go all the way around and you can go on the ceiling. It follows you though, so you kind of stay in that third person perspective. Unlike Mario Kart, it's not cute or you're not really racing. You're just trying to avoid obstacles, and it's fun. This part is fun. The kind of racing through these tunnels part is fun, if not frustrating, because you can't possibly make it through in one go. Like, it's impossible. You just have to kind of memorize where all these little things are that just pop out at you randomly.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, I say randomly, but it seems random the first time you play it. Not obviously, but you can memorize it because it does at the same time each run. So when you die, you go back to the beginning, you do it again. You can remember, oh, there's a spike there, or there's a wall there, or there's a gap there, or here I have to press a button to make this gate open, or whatever it is. So you kind of end up just remembering the path and what you have to do to make it through. So it took me maybe like 20 or 30 goes to get through like even the first level. So I would say it borders on frustrating if you're not one to keep trying something until you get it. Definitely not going to like this. But if you're a stickler for death and just getting things right, you said this before, kind of with the Lemmings style, or not Lemmings, but the Tin Heart style versus the Mario versus Donkey Kong style. There's kind of only one way you can get through. You just have to nail it. Yeah. The second style of gameplay is like a top-down kind of a boss fight arena kind of thing where you're riding around on your bike still, but now you're looking down on the scene and you have to use your different bike elements like a grappling hook to defeat the boss. And this is equally frustrating and quite difficult. Yeah, it's an interesting title. I love that they have tried something pretty different and combined two pretty different styles in the one game. I just don't love that it's really, really hard and will put off a lot of people. I think maybe some difficulty settings could have helped, or maybe some tutorials or a simpler kind of gradient into the difficulty might have been nice as well. But it is what it is. My review, I've kind of finished writing it, so that'll be up during the week, I think. And that's kind of the main games I'm playing this week. So what's on the horizon for us, Kirk?
Well, real quick thought on the game like that too, because I'm just curious to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
When I'm playing a game where it is that difficult, those are some of the most difficult reviews for me to write because it's hard for me to determine if I'm just really bad at it.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult. I just can't figure it out. Or there are a lot of games where they purposely make them exceptionally difficult because they are catering towards a very specific kind of game player. Because there are people out there who want that difficulty. So then I'm, aside from my inability to play it, then I have to figure out, okay, if I was good at this, then is it still that difficult, or is this unfair? Is it, pushing all the right buttons to so once you're able to overcome it, you get it. And then you get that rush of, I finally beat it, which is, I think the main appeal of those games. It's very hard for me to toe the line on that when I'm writing that review, or I should say a threaded. So I'm curious to see how you handle it in that regard.
Yeah, it is hard because I can appreciate a tough game. I can appreciate something that's meant to be difficult, and there are plenty of platformers that fit that bill. And I've reviewed some recently that definitely were purposely difficult, but the challenge was fun because you knew you could get through it, and I wanted to get through it. And the racing sections, in Gripper, I would say fall into that category. They're really tough, but satisfying to complete. And because it is more or less based on memory. I think what makes this one fail a little bit for me is that it doesn't try to, and it's not supposed to hold your hand exactly because it's meant to be hard, but it could do a better job of being clear about what you're meant to do, because there aren't a whole lot of instructions. For example, with the racing style of gameplay, you have to press certain points. There's like a gate in front of you, and you have to press ZL or ZR to either slide under or open the gate, shoot it. I guess you have a gun, I suppose, and it doesn't tell you that you need to time it with a circle. It just says press it. So I press it, and it doesn't work, and that happened over and over again. And then I realized the circle's actually closing, and it wants me to press it when the circle reaches the middle. And it's like, I didn't know that. And it took me like 10 goes to work that out. And I kept losing. You have 4 hits to get through this, racing section. And I would lose a hit straight up because the very first thing you do is you have to press the ZR button to open the gate. And I'm like, why can't I open this gate? I'm pressing ZR. It says ZR. So I found lack of instructions a bit frustrating. I think it could be clearer. And same with the boss battles. They seem to be more based on luck than anything. You've kind of got your motorbike, you're riding around. There's these little kind of robots chasing you, which blow up. There's a boss, obviously, you've got to take down. It's just random. You can kind of knock down rocks to get health. And it's not clear, though, that you can do that. It's not clear how to go about completing the level, I think, is the worst part. If it was more like platformers are a bit easier, I suppose, because, you have to jump on a platform, you have to defeat an enemy, you have to avoid spikes, whatever it is. This is a very different style. And because it's also 2 styles in one, I think that makes it a little more challenging. So,
right.
Yeah, but I completely agree. It's very hard to balance a review when you think, oh, is it just me? Am I really bad? And at first I thought I was. And when I got through the first racing section, I did feel like, yes, I finally achieved something, and that was great. And then I thought, oh, this is nice. I get I don't have to do another racing section straight away. I get to do a boss fight, which is cool. Everyone likes a good boss fight. But that took even longer. That took way more goes than even the race did. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's really, really tough. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad I'm not the only one who wrestles with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't like giving bad reviews, and it'll get a mediocre review probably. And the other thing is, then you take into account how it looks and how it sounds. And to be honest, the soundtrack is probably the best part of this game. It's got a pretty good soundtrack, I think. Even when you turn it on, it says, hey, for the best experience, play this with headphones. And I did that. I grabbed my good headphones and put them on because I'm like, I thought it was a shooter when I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, it's like a shooter on a motorbike. It's not really a shooter. But it does have those, in shooters, like dual stick shooters, you kind of have that beat. It seems to always be accompanied with some sort of synth soundtrack with a good beat.
Yeah. I know the sound.
Yes, it's like that. It's a shooter soundtrack, I would say. And it's pretty good. I do like the soundtrack. It works. And there's some voice work that's kind of okay. And the cutscenes are pretty good, like animation-wise. So there's some positive elements to it. I think it just falls a bit flat in some of its gameplay mechanics, and just overall lack of instruction is probably the downfall for this one. And also it's not cheap. It's not super expensive or anything, but it's not like a $5 or $10 game. I think it's $20, which is not expensive, but it's for what it is. And it's not a super long game either. Although, having said that, if you're going to die 100 times, I suppose that does increase the longevity. I can't see a lot of people doing that. I can't see a lot of people getting through the fight. I think there's 5 boss fights to go through. You have to be really, really dedicated and persistent. But hey, maybe it will take you a year. Maybe you'll pick it up after 3 months. Go, I'm going to give that game another crack, and you'll maybe do it. I don't know. I need more opinions on this, I think. So.
Well, they'll be out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, true. Yeah, well, I think that brings us to the end of the show for this week. Did you have any closing comments for us, Kirk?
Not really, except that, the magazine, if you haven't subscribed to the magazine, go ahead and do that. We got our first copies. Mine arrived this week, and I'm quite thrilled with it. And everyone I've shown it to has been impressed. So
that's so cool.
It's good. And, I do want to say one thing about the magazine, something that didn't occur to me until I actually had it versus, like, say, just reading reviews, for example, on the web. Because, of course, the magazine's there later. These games have been out for a bit. The magazine, it's stuff that we've published recently. But the great thing about a magazine is after you read one, all you got to do to get to the next game is turn a page.
Yeah.
So you end up reading about things you normally wouldn't, because the internet, you're constantly distracted by all kinds of things that are moving it around.
So
you got the magazine, and you're just discovering things from front to back, games that you hadn't even considered. So as I'm flipping through, I'm reading reviews because I don't read every review. We have a crew of editors for Pure Nintendo, so I'm not checking out every single one that gets published. But the magazine I can, because it's all right there back to back. So I'm reading about these. I'm discovering things that I otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that's my favorite thing about having a print magazine bed.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I miss that. I've spoken before about growing up in the 90s and having lots of different gaming magazines. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring back that feeling of being able to just leaf through a magazine and read things you wouldn't normally read. And that's a great analogy. Is it an analogy? It's not an analogy. It's a great, I don't know.
Well, we'll go with analogy.
Okay. Sure.
Definitions of words change all the time. You've started this one down a new track.
Thanks. Yeah, it's hard to believe I'm a writer sometimes. Anyway.
There are so many words to know. So
many.
To master.
English is hard.
We're allowed to mess up now and again. I forgot the name of a game and the main character of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. It actually just came back to me. It's Noah. So we've all made these mistakes.
The pressures of recording. That's awesome. Thank you. Yes. And if you do want to subscribe to the magazine, we're working on our next issue already. It'll be out sometime in June, I believe, at this stage. So you can head over to patreon.com/Pure Nintendo. We would love your support. And thank you so much, Kirk, for joining me today and having this robust conversation about all things Nintendo for the week.
Oh, absolutely. Always a fun time.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Please, as I said, like, subscribe, rate us, comment, whatever you want to do. We would love your support. And we'll be back next week with much more.